everybody for joining us today. Welcome. We're going to take a look at Regula for infrastructure as code security. It can be used for Terraform, AWS CloudFormation, and today specifically we're going to explore all of the, a number of the pre-built policies that come with Regula. Before we begin, just want to give everybody a heads up on a report that we just released that's available to you. It's the State of Cloud Security 2021. We do this every year. This year we partnered with our friends over at Sonatype to survey 300 cloud professionals. It's cloud engineers, DevOps, security engineers, etc., to get more insights into the challenges they're facing with cloud security, the impact that kind of misconfiguration and the effort to prevent it is having on their team and on their organization, as well as sort of what they kind of see that they need to do a better job, and where they see all this is headed. It's chock full of awesome, interesting stats. You can download it for free at fugue.co/report. And kind of just as a setup to where we're headed today in our talk, these stats are from our survey. A lot of these things can be addressed, I think, fairly effectively with applying cloud security at every stage of the software development lifecycle. And obviously, infrastructure as code in development and in CI/CD, securing that is a big piece of that. So again, go get yourself a copy of this, and we'll move forward. Let's get to our agenda. We'll do some introductions here in a second, kind of an overview of kind of how we view the cloud infrastructure, SDLC and IC security, a look at Regula for Terraform and AWS CloudFormation security, and then we'll get into the pre-built policies that are available to you. And that's a nice typo on the screen, and I blame myself for that. So with us today to do that, we have Curtis Myzie. He's our VP of engineering here at Fugue. He's going to get into the code, kind of walk through a lot of these policies that are available and how to employ those to check your Terraform infrastructure as code, and to kind of set up and give us a little bit of an overview of Regula. We have a principal solutions engineer here, Ricardo, who does a lot of these with us, so we might be familiar to a number of you. And then at the end, we will have a Q&A, but I want to encourage everybody at any point during this session, if you have any questions at all for us, please do pop those into chat. And make sure that you choose, all attendees and panelists, not just panelists. But if you want to stay anonymous, you can shoot the panelists a question, and we will pose that to you. So with that said, why don't I first introduce Ricardo Green, who will walk us through sort of a little bit about what Regula is and why we think you should take a close look at it. Hey, Ricardo.
How's it going, Drew? Thank you very much. And I will take partial responsibility because you did ask me to review the slides. So
it's a shared responsibility model here. We have failed.
That's a different lunch and learn topic.
Right.
Anyway, everybody, thanks for joining us. We are really fortunate because Curtis is going to be on this with me as well. So just from a kind of a role standpoint within the organization, I work a lot with our customers, doing a lot of pre-sales and post-sales stuff, but it's really kind of communicating Fugue's value and really educating customers and some of the things that we protect. The nice part about having Curtis on here with me is Curtis actually has direct impact on our roadmap, actually building the product and a lot of the tools. So it's always nice to get his perspective. And another thing to point out is we at Fugue use Fugue. So really to get an idea of how we're using our own tools on a day-to-day basis to secure our own cloud environments. So what I'm going to do is just take a couple of minutes, kind of set the stage, talk a little bit about the problem that we solve, kind of our position, things that we've seen within the market with our customers, prospects that we talk to. So, it brings us to why we're here. So, why do we talk about this? Why is this important? Obviously, it's kind of a rhetorical question. You all know that. That's why you're all here. But we always talk about being able to move fast, and what the cloud gives us the ability to do is we can spin up things extremely fast. If we have environments, creating new applications, we want them to be in the cloud. We want to make them available, and we want to be able to iterate. So we want to be able to get feedback. The problem that we have within organizations is that there's always going to be an approval process, which is absolutely necessary. So what we find is the more that we can automate those sorts of things, whether it's auditing the environments, securing things, within our code before they actually get to the security or operations gates, actually taking that responsibility on. And that's, we can start taking action on those things. So the sooner that we know that those errors are present or potential vulnerabilities, we can address those. From an engineering perspective, everybody wants to be able to focus on creating more value. So you don't want to spend time fixing things and iterating over problems. You want to be able to create value for your organizations. So one of the things that we uncovered in our survey is that half of cloud engineering teams are devoting 50 or more hours per week to IAC security. So, one of our early customers actually said, the holy grail for them is if you can evaluate our infrastructure as code before you even deploy it to the cloud, that's where you're making an impact. The cool thing with me being at Fugue for such a long time, over 3.5 years now, is being able to see that come to fruition. So, and that's where we are. And that's what you're going to see with Regula shortly. And then the key is, without breaking the rules. So you give your developers, your operations teams, anybody who's deploying infrastructure, all of the information that they need before it even hits the cloud. You're doing things based on whatever established corporate governance that you've created, whatever security guidelines that have been set. And everybody is having that same awareness throughout the organization. Everybody is concerned with breaches, and we often talk to prospects about protecting people from doing something stupid. This is what, looking at the infrastructure as code is going to allow us to do, to be able to call out those vulnerabilities. And if necessary, we can stop things from happening. We can stop builds. So we become a really nice preventative gate before these resources are deployed. So let's take a look at Fugue itself. So for those that aren't familiar with Fugue, so Fugue actually has, there's tools that are basically work together. So it's all on the cloud environments. So really AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, GovCloud as well. We're going to focus this Lunch and Learn specifically on looking at AWS and Terraform, but you can look at Terraform across any of the cloud providers. And really, it's a matter of us starting on the left side. So we really want to be able to start as early as possible. So we look at, we start talking about cloud security being applied at each phase of that development lifecycle. So if we look on the left side, when you're actually developing that infrastructure deployment. So when you're creating your Terraform, when you're creating your cloud formation, to actually have a set of rules, a set of policies that you are evaluating before that that file even goes to your CI system, or whether you do and apply directly from your laptop or desktop, being able to evaluate that before it gets there. When you're in deployment, having the Regula tools installed on your CI tool to actually do that evaluation and have the ability in an automated fashion to be able to kill a build, be able to stop it, to send feedback back to the developer who pushed that, being able to actually implement that within your CI tool in an automated fashion. And then at runtime. So you're always going to have Fugue, the Fugue UI. Is a 100% SaaS tool, so it's all permissions based, but being able to get that sort of information. So those same sets of rules that you're evaluating pre-deployment, you're also able to evaluate those at runtime. So if there are things that you've deployed that are non-compliant or that are vulnerable, you're going to get those alerts and notifications, and those things are going to be brought out to you. So really being able to have an impact at every stage is you're able to up the level of security, and really change the way that the process is, to make your environment deployments a lot more secure. So why ISC security matters. So obviously this goes without saying, catching these vulnerabilities pre-deployment reduces the risk. We also recognize that you can't catch everything. Quite often when you are deploying applications or deploying additional resources, you are deploying an application workload in an existing VPC. You may or may not have visibility into that virtual private network, for example. So you don't know how the security group configurations are in that VPC currently. You don't know what you are allowing in and out of that specific network. So that's obviously something that you can't catch pre-deployment. But if you know the workload that you're deploying, if you are doing things properly, if you are encrypting your storage volumes, if you are restricting access by permissions, or not deploying policies that are too permissive, if you're able to catch that, obviously you are reducing the number of cloud vulnerabilities. Small misconfigurations can become large attack surfaces. I often think of, with Terraform specifically, a lot of times when you're deploying resources, if you're not specifying where you are deploying them, if you're not calling out a specific VPC, for example, it will just deploy it into that default VPC. If you don't turn things on, for example, if you don't set what the encryption value should be, quite often the default value is false, so that whatever the storage is not encrypted on, whether it's a database, storage volume. If you don't intentionally turn the block public access on an S3 bucket, for example, it's going to be open. So certain things that you need to, that are listed as optional within Terraform, that you need to make sure that you are setting those values. And that's what checking the infrastructure as code is going to do for you. It's faster and easier to fix issues earlier in development. Absolutely. So prior to the application actually running within the cloud, if you can make that fix, change a value from false to true, obviously that's going to be a little bit easier. And iterating within the code is a lot easier than having to create maintenance windows to redeploy applications and do a bunch of different things. And also you're maintaining really good cloud practices with maintaining a clean state file with the actual infrastructure that you have deployed at that time. Some cloud infrastructure mistakes can't be fixed later. It kind of speaks to the previous point. Many times you just have to redeploy specific things. So if it's an EC2 instance, for example, and you have a volume that's unencrypted, you really should just redeploy that instance and things like that. So additional with permissions and such, you really want to just redeploy things clean so that everything is in working order. And you're shipping faster and more often. So you start creating these automated gates so that you are able to do things quicker. Things are within the pipeline, and you're trusting the pipeline and the policies and rules that are being checked within that pipeline to make sure that we catch things. So we talk a little bit about the Regula policy engine, which I will turn things over to Curtis shortly to get deeper into. But Regula is an open source policy engine for checking infrastructures, code, and cloud resources for security and compliance. So the foundation of the rule evaluations is built with Open Policy Agent. The underlying language is Rego, and we will make sure that I'm going to show you a little bit of the repo and show you the link where you can get more details about the language and the rules that we have. But essentially what Fugue has done is we've open sourced hundreds of predefined rules with support for CIS benchmarks. So you think about, at a minimum, having best practices rules available to you day one with use of Regula is really a powerful thing. So we are not expecting customers to go out and have to write a bunch of rules that are mapped to CIS benchmarks. We have done that for you. And that is across all of the cloud platforms. And I'll show you that link as well. But that's a pretty awesome thing. Easy to develop and test rules. So the Regula project itself is a CLI. So Curtis will show you some of the command line tools, but there is a built-in REPL, a number of different tools within the CLI that will allow you to actually build tests and to be able to test your rules as you're creating them. You can tell Regula to check not only the built-in policies, but direct it to include additional files, additional rules. One of those things that comes to mind is customers are always making sure that they are applying proper tagging hygiene, that they understand the reasons or who deployed resources, the actual what that use case may be. And quite often that's represented in a tag, whether it's a name or application or the group that deployed it. You can start incorporating that into your IAC checks, which is really awesome. And I think we're actually going to do another session on actually custom rule development for that. And the last thing that we'll talk about is it integrates with CI/CD tools. So if you think any of the sort of bash commands that you might write or create to do certain things within your CI/CDs, whether it's when you're using other testing frameworks, Regula is no different. You're going to be able to do a simple Regula run command, which does all sorts of powerful things and gives us a ton of insight into the files that we're evaluating before they actually hit the cloud environments. So over here, you'll just see how everything works with the inputs going into the Regula policy engine. These are a couple of different ways you can install it. You can use a Docker image, which we've made available on Docker Hub. If you're on a Mac, you have a homebrew installation as well. It has OPA policy agent in there already. Rules and compliance frameworks are there, and a framework for testing and debugging. I'm going to stop sharing this and show you just a quick screen of where all of the rules are. And then I will turn things over to Curtis. But this is where you can go to regula.dev is here. This is where you will see all of the rules that we have made available. The other thing that you will see here is a Fugue rule ID. So there's complete uniformity between this set of rules as well as our runtime rules, which we won't be getting into for this session, but the runtime rules, we are going to be checking the same exact thing. So being able to evaluate things pre-deployment, obviously, is where Regula is going to come in. The Fugue UI is going to be doing the continuous compliance, checking for changes, and everything is evaluated according to these same rules and the rule IDs. So obviously for reporting, that comes into play. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Curtis is going to take over and get a little deeper and show you some examples.
Thanks, Ricardo.
Yep.
So I will be sharing my VS Code window and looking at some code with you all, Terraform specifically, show off the Regula CLI and a handful of cool features in here. So to start off and kind of set the stage here, we've got a Git repository called the Superstore. It's got a source directory with a bunch of IAC templates in it. So we've got a mix of CloudFormation templates in here, Terraform templates, a couple different directories of those. Ricardo and I put together this Launch and Learn Terraform module, so we'll focus on that initially. One of the points being here, though, is you can use Regula to evaluate not just like single Terraform files or anything like that, but also entire Terraform modules, Terraform plans, and other IAC tools like CloudFormation too. It's compatible with those. Like Ricardo mentioned, we've got a Regula CLI, which is really easy to install. The -H options, generally, you can always refer to for a little bit of direction on where to go. But Regula run is kind of the key command, which actually evaluates rules against your infrastructure's code templates. And the nice thing is Regula run just out of the box in a repository is going to do what you want 90% of the time. So what that does is it looks through all subdirectories from where you are and evaluates all rules against them. All rules against all resources it finds, even if it's a mix of, say, CloudFormation and Terraform, which is pretty handy. To start off, though, we'll go into this subdirectory. In here, we've got one Terraform file, pretty simple. and we can do Regula run, like I said. And here is Regula's output, and I'll just step you through this. Apologies if it's a bit hard to read or anything. I tried to blow it up to get a reasonable font size, but the output of Regula run are what we call rule results. And so every entry here are rules. And then under that are all the resources that failed that rule. And so you can see we've got a bunch of failures in here that found 6 problems with that one template. For each problem, it gives you the file name and the line number where that problem was found. If you're in VS Code, as an example, you can hit the command key and jump to that issue. So that takes us right to this AWS security group has a problem on line 73. And so just using this as an example, Regula outputs the message, this security group allows traffic from everywhere to port 80. So pretty easy network issue here to highlight. And I'll talk a little bit more about this one, but we're going to talk through a handful of other resources in this file, some of the issues they have, and talk about, the Regula built-in rules. So we'll keep drilling into this specific failure for a few minutes. So port 80 is open. This one's pretty straightforward. So this, allows HTTP traffic from the internet to the security group, which occasionally could be intentional, but often could be somewhat of a smell or a vulnerability here. More often you'd send your traffic to, say, a load balancer if you're going to allow for this, or not use port 80. In any case, this specific failure is about, being open to the world on port 80. And so just as an example, we can switch this to use a private network range. We'll switch it to a 10.1 network. So you can see that we can make that change, run Regula again. And that issue, let's see, did I not fix that one? Port 80, port 80. Let's save. Might have scrolled up too far. Right. Yeah, it did resolve. I think I just scrolled up too far. So the port 80 rule result is now gone. And so that issue is fixed. There's a similar issue with port 22 just below it. We can switch that to use a different subnet and fix that problem. So we keep making progress here. So that's, a very simplistic example. And like I said, depending on what you're trying to do, you may or may not want these. In the event that you actually did want that port to be open on that security group, there's something called waivers. And so you can add a waiver in Regula, just like you can add a waiver in the main Fugue product, and say that this was an intentional configuration. So that's just a quick run through of how we fix rule results from one specific rule failing on resources in our Terraform files. That was a network example. We also have built-in rules in a number of other categories. So we've got rules relating to network configuration, rules relating to IAM, identity and access management, rules related to secure login, and a number of other categories. So altogether, it's over 100 rules for AWS, and a large number for Google and Azure as well. So let's walk through a couple other cases. We've got one more issue here. So VPC flow logging should be enabled. This is an example where we kind of, did the quick hack job of adding a VPC with, virtually no configuration here. Easy for any developer to throw in a resource like this and leave out a bunch of configuration. Well, for VPCs, one of the key configurations is enabling flow logs so that, you have an audit log of all the traffic in the future. And that's needed to fulfill a bunch of compliance standards. And in the simplistic example, that's just not enabled. So Regula calls that out. On line 51, we've got a VPC without flow logging enabled. One thing you can do with that, just so you know, we're always improving Regula here, and I think we're going to be including a link to the remediation steps directly here in the outputs shortly. But these remediation steps actually are on the Fugue web pages. And so I'm going to just give me a moment. I'm going to switch my screen share to my
And
browser.
I'll post that link in the chat also.
Cool. All right. So you should be seeing my browser now. On the Fugue documentation page, we have a whole suite of remediation steps for every Fugue rule that's built into Regula and otherwise. We recently added the Terraform remediation steps. And so with that VPC flow log example, we've got a whole page devoted to that rule, how to fix it via the AWS console if you were to do it directly, how to fix it with the CLI, and then how to fix it with Terraform. And so, you know, this is a pretty straightforward case actually, where if you copy and paste a resource configuration from here, that's the flow log setup. We'll add that to our Terraform template. And the gist of that is we're adding an AWS flow log. We're pointing it at this VPC, which is named lunch. So get that reference right. And then if we run Regula again, that issue has now disappeared. So we've got a flow log set on our VPC and we're making progress. I think these last two should be quick fixes too, so we can just run through those. And one of the things you can start to think about is like what type of remediation workflow or general developer workflows your team might use. Obviously, like I'm doing, you can run Regula yourself, but there's a lot of ways you can kind of tie Regula into developer workflows to automate certain aspects of it. You know, Ricardo mentioned CI/CD pipelines. You can run Regula there really easily. And then I'm also going to show you one other way you can automate it on developer laptops. And I'll show you that in a few minutes. But while we're fixing rules, I'll continue on. So IAM policy should not have full administrative privileges. Line 6, we'll jump there. So this is a AWS IAM policy.
Curtis, you're still showing your browser.
Oh, thank you, Ricardo. Thank you. All right, back to VS Code. Sorry about that. So IAM policy should not have full administrative privileges. That's the next one we're going to look at. We've just got 2 failures left in this file. This AWS IAM policy is really one of the worst possible configurations you can have. This is granting really wide permissions to this policy. And so, you know, if you have infrastructure that uses this and an attacker, you know, manages to break into that infrastructure, they've got really wide open permissions and can do a ton of damage. So this is an incredibly important rule. And, you know, this is a little bit of an example here, so we're not sure what this is really supposed to be doing. But generally here, instead of the star on action, you need to have a specific action called out, one or more of them, rather than having just a blanket star. So let's say this really just needs EC2 describe capabilities. Let's switch it over to that. On Regula again, we fix that issue. We'll go to the last issue here. The default security group should restrict all traffic. And I think that one I'm going to skip for now because I don't have a good demo set up for it yet. But you get the gist again. We kind of got a workflow here where we can, you know, find and fix issues in our IAC templates. Let me show you a couple other workflows that are interesting though. So first off, a developer is not always going to remember to run Regula or any other checks right before they commit and push necessarily. So if we can kind of do things a little bit more automatically, that can be really helpful. So one way to do that is with pre-commit hooks. This is a general feature with Git, which you can use for a bunch of different purposes. With pre-commit, pre-commit is a open source Python package too that builds atop of the Git capabilities. And so you can install the program pre-commit quite easily. You can brew install it or pip install it. And having done that, you can now create a pre-commit config file in any of your Git repositories. They look like this roughly. You can add any number of hooks, and each of these hooks define commands that are going to run when a developer does a git commit command. And so we can use that as an opportunity to run Regula and check the files they change for any security issues. I'm actually going to simplify this one down a little bit because this has some code formatting in there and some other linting, which we're not going to use right now. I want to simplify it down so that you have an easy example to reference. So with this, we're going to run a pre-commit step called Regula. We're going to run it on any file type. The -i, well, so this entry specifies the command we're going to run for any changed files. So we're going to, when any file is changed, we're going to run Regula run. And we're using a couple different options here as well. Regula run by itself would work just fine, but we're going to pass -i rules. And that actually includes some custom Regula code that we have locally. And we're going to include a waivers file. And so this is where we can say, if this rule isn't applicable in this repository or this specific resource should be ignored, we can do that in a waivers file. So running Regula with some custom rules, a waivers file, and all the built-in rules implicitly. We're going to run it on Terraform files for now. And I can drop that. So here's a pre-commit configuration that uses Regula. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at what files we got staged. I need to commit this pre-commit file. So I'm going to do that. All right. So back at the root of the repo, I'm going to add the pre-commit file. Do that. Update pre-commit hook. My regex there was bad. All right. Yeah, that's a regular expression for the file names that are going to be processed by that hook. So I had a mistake there. Add our pre-commit file, commit it, update pre-commit. Cool. Now that pre-commit hook's enabled, and there's one other command to enable it, I think, which I've already done, which is like pre-commit install, which is quite easy. Once you've done that, we can now go in and test this out. So let's go back to the Lunch and Learn directory. We know we've got a vulnerable file in here. And let's back out one of those changes. Lunch and Learn. All right, now I'm going to try to commit that bad file. Add Terraform. So this is the Git pre-commit hook in action. So we tried to do a Git commit, Regula ran and failed, and that actually aborted the commit, which is exactly what we wanted in this case. So we've got, a high severity issue that Regula found in this file, and we're not going to let the developer proceed with that. They've got to fix the issue before they can actually make a commit. And if you do a Git status, you can see the commit didn't actually happen. It was aborted, which is great. So this is one way to, if you had a team adopt this pre-commit hook approach, then you could ensure that, no change is committed to the repository that doesn't pass certain checks. And you can leverage all the Regula built-in rules in that way, which is pretty cool. Assuming you went ahead and fixed those problems, then Git commit would obviously pass. So that is a quick glance at using Git pre-commit, and definitely let us know if you have any questions on that front.
Yeah, Curtis, there are a couple of questions in the chat. I don't know, Sivi, if you were going to bring that up.
I was, but you can go ahead.
Okay, so I'll scroll through a couple of these. So one of the questions was just directly in terms of the rules themselves, having to, how do we ensure that the policies in Regula match the policies in the live scanning portion of Fugue?
Yep.
And the answer is they're already set up. So all of CIS benchmarks that can be evaluated pre-deployment are within Regula. And so you would have those same rules. So in the rules that the rule evaluations that Curtis was showing, there's a Fugue rule ID. So that's the same rule ID that you will see in the runtime version of it. So there is uniformity there. The question was about creating custom rules. You absolutely can create custom rules in the Regula run command. There's a flag to include additional files or additional folders where you have additional rules. So you absolutely can do that as well.
Yep, you got it. Yeah, and that was covered briefly in that pre-commit hook example. So the -I includes directories, which can have other Rego code in it. And so this was an example Regula rule that's in this local repository, which we're actually using too.
And a little bit not part of this, but the question was, can those rules be injected into the Fugue runtime tool in the UI as well? And the answer to that is yes. So along with the Regula command line tool, we have a Fugue client, which is a command line for interacting with the Fugue UI, and you can actually do a import those rules into the Fugue UI. So it's really nice that you could actually have your own sort of custom compliance family, and you can actually build that and create certain rules that are a part of a specific subset of another compliance family and have those being checked pre-deployment as well as post-deployment. Let's see. Someone had asked about playing with it. Are there any sample Terraform files to use? So in our public GitHub repository, so github.com/Fugue, there are a number of repositories there. I would probably focus on the ones that are some of the CI/CD examples, where there is a Terraform file that you could use and play around with. But really, you could create, if you have a comfort level with Terraform, you could create a Terraform file, 20, 30 minutes, just to start playing around with it and seeing some of the configurations that Curtis was talking about. And I think it's important to also mention that, with Terraform, that, we talk a lot about the speed and being able to deploy things fast. When you look through the documentation, there's a number of attributes. There's a set number of required attributes, and then there are a bunch of attributes which are optional, but are they can be security impacting. So you want to pay attention to those. And I think that's one of the really nice things about Regula, is that we are checking all of the attributes and all of those configurations to look for the presence or absence of those settings.
And hey, Ricardo, I'll jump into with one other recommendation for some content here, and I'll switch my screen share for a sec. We just recently open sourced some content from one of our master classes relating to Regula and Terraform 2. This is an open source repo, and we can drop the link to this in channel as well. This does have a handful of examples in here, I think, of much of what we've talked about and more. So it's got a waivers example, a pre-commit configuration, and then under topics here, we've got example code and example commands that go along with it so that you can try all this out. And I don't think we've mentioned this yet too, but one other really nice thing to try out is how Regula supports both HCL evaluation and evaluating Terraform plans with the same rule, which is a pretty unique capability and really, really handy. So you can write one rule that applies to both, your HCL code and Terraform plans. And this walks you through how to do that as well. So like I said, I'll share this link in the chat.
Yeah, I just posted it, so everyone should be able to see that now.
Thanks. Cool. Dave, I see your question. Can it consume any JSON, e.g., for example, Azure ARM? Right now, Regula does some input processing to make the rule inputs consistent. So right now we're focused on CloudFormation and Terraform templates. We're planning to add Azure ARM. That's definitely on the roadmap. And then generally supporting any input JSON is something on our minds and would be a logical addition. But right now it is specific to Terraform and CloudFormation. What else we got, Ricardo?
I think we are good on questions.
Cool. All right. I will show a couple more things. Let's see. While we have this repository up, take a minute to just show you a couple different ways you can use Regula in a couple different types of environments. So we talked about having it on developer laptops, using pre-commit, or just running it manually. Here's a couple other ways you can run it. We do have a Docker image available that includes all the built-in rules too, and you can Docker run that. With that, you mount your local source directory using a Docker volume into a workspace directory, and it works on all the files in there. So this can be a really easy one to use in like CI/CD if your CI/CD is able to run Docker containers. And then here's just a quick script to download the latest release of Regula, or maybe the 1.0 release, and make use of that inside CI/CD or whatever. So this is an example Circle CI job that installs Regula, and then you can use it from there. So that's a couple different ways you can make use of it. Let's see. What else was I going to cover? And a little bit more about the built-in rules. Like I mentioned, there's definitely a bunch of different categories we help with. We kind of looked at some that are specific to IAM and to networking. Some other categories, credential management. So we can notice, for example, access keys that haven't been rotated, secure login information, encryption settings is a really common one, and public access is another really common one for databases and so on. And to call out a few more specific examples that are built in with Regula, S3 buckets not being readable, obviously important. IAM roles with trust relationships, that's about as important or as important as that admin permissions one. So what this is about is the assume role capability in AWS, where using IAM assume role, you can actually get permissions to other AWS accounts, and it certainly possible to use this in a secure way, but it's also easy to get it wrong. And so looking for external IDs being set in MFA or MFA being enabled is really key. So that's a really important rule that's built into. And then here's a mention of a few different database and Azure and Google rules as well. But like I mentioned kind of at the start, one of the great things is you can just do regular run and you get all those built-in rules without doing any work. And you know, so Regula itself is actually just a single binary built with Go, and that has compiled in all the Rego code that is needed to do that. So it should be quite easy to get up and running with. I think that mostly covers my topics that I was going to step through, Ricardo. So if we've got other questions, that's great. Or if it seems like I missed anything, let me know.
Don't have any more questions. That was a lot for a lot of folks. I kind of think back to the customers that have asked us like over the years, you know, for this capability. So us having it is awesome at this point. I think it gives people a lot to think about operationally, how you could start injecting these sorts of checks within the infrastructure as code. And hopefully that's, you know, that's what's happening now. So definitely appreciate everyone's time and attention. I would say to make sure that you bookmark, star, you know, the repo, check it out. You know, trying to think the Curtis, you were showing the most recent release, I think, that had the error messaging in there, that had the line numbers. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I think that just was released this morning, actually. So if you don't have that yet, you can do an update and get it.
Yeah, and so a lot of it is if you're on a Mac, just using a brew install or brew upgrade. That's really nice. Just from a cadence perspective, Curtis's team releases every 2 weeks. So whether it's you know, updating minor updates and fixes, or you know, additional features that you will see, you know, we are actively iterating and improving. So we certainly want any sort of feedback. We look at the issues as we mentioned, it is an open source project. So if you have issues, definitely post them. Any comments, we love to hear it, and any feedback, please let us know. So these are active projects we are actively engaged in. Just some for some folks that may be existing customers, our enterprise version of this, which will connect into the Fugue UI. So for some reporting, some additional visibility into the evaluations, which you would be able to see in a centralized location within your the Fugue UI is coming soon as well. We have some internal visibility into that, or I should say I and the rest of the team obviously have some internal visibility into that development, and that is coming along really nicely. So it'll be exciting to release that very soon. And I think we touched on it, but I'll mention it here. The ability to create your own custom compliance family. So if you think about, you may not be able to adhere to, say, the entire NIST framework, but there are a handful of evaluations that you want to perform, and certain rules that you want to report on a regular basis, on a continuously compliant basis, or continuous basis for compliance. You have the ability to do that in the Fugue UI as well. So as I said, we continue to iterate, we continue to grow the platform, make it better, and really help operationalize it for our customers and prospects. So any questions, please let us know. Other than that, Drew, if there's any other housekeeping notes, if you wanted to bring this up.
Yeah. Wanted to see, Ricardo, if you could bring up the deck. We just had kind of a closing slide with some of these links.
Yep.
And as you said, you know, pre-built policies were kind of the focus here today, but you know, Regula definitely supports custom policies using Rego. It's really powerful. We do have a lunch and learn on August 19th that's going to dive into creating custom policies in Regula for Terraform and AWS CloudFormation.
And that link is, I just put up in the chat as well, if you wanted to register for that.
Yep, thank you. And I will share my screen to kind of close out.
I think I have it now. Oh, okay.
No, yeah, no, this is great. Now, thanks, Ricardo. So kind of just coming back to the SDLC for cloud infrastructure and security, which Ricardo showed earlier. One of the things that really kind of jumped out when we ran that survey that's in the State of Cloud Security report, like I think it was 43% noted the challenges that they're facing, kind of using different policies and policy frameworks and tooling for the development side with infrastructure as code, and then their cloud runtime, maybe using some kind of CSPM tool. And no matter how much effort you put into that, you're never really going to get those kind of different policy frameworks to reconcile. It's, a lot of wasted time, and security gaps can arise. So we feel, and we put a lot of effort in here on the engineering side with our product side to be able to use those same policies that you could be using with Regula to check your infrastructure as code, and bring those policies into Fugue and use those to check your runtime environment. So kind of one set of policies fits every stage of your SDLC. And so here's some additional resources. Again, the Regula doc site is regula.dev. Do check that out. Obviously, Regula on GitHub. Docker image is available on Docker Hub if you want to run that locally. And definitely check out Open Policy Agent. We're big fans of OPA here. We contribute to the OPA project. It really is an awesome policy standard out there, and we found it's been really ideal for kind of the infrastructure security use case that we use here at Fugue and with IAC and with Regula. And then with Fugue itself, throw a little pitch out there. You can use Fugue to secure your AWS, Google Cloud, or Azure environments using those same policies as you're using to check infrastructure as code with Regula. And we guarantee that you will not only get great results, but you'll get them quickly. In 15 minutes, Fugue is going to give you a full comprehensive map of your environment. So you can kind of visually understand what you have running, identify issues that you might have that might have been missed before. And we're going to give you a full kind of image of what your compliance and security posture is versus any number of compliance regimes that are out there. Guidance on how to bring that into compliance and work with us, and we guarantee that you will bring your environment into compliance in 8 weeks. So definitely reach out to us if you'd like to dig into that more, work with folks like Ricardo on your unique use case, and explore getting up and running with Fugue. So with that, really appreciate everybody's time. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you at the next Lunch and Learn.